Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Stanley's Stinkers, a unique look at college football where we pick the losers. That's right, the losers. Each week we'll look at 20 of the biggest games, we'll break down the teams, we'll analyze the coaches, and we might even flirt with the cheerleaders. But in the end, we'll predict the losers, or in this case, the stinkers in each of the contests. Stay tuned because this week's games are coming up. Well, the 2012 college football season is playing in its final games, with the last of the bowl games being played leading right up to the BCS National Championship. Stanley's Stinkers enjoyed a remarkable first season, successfully picking the losers in 78% of our games. That's not bad considering we use reverse prognostication to pick the losers in college football's biggest games. With that said, here are the games that show up as we complete the season on the Stinkometer. Mississippi State Bulldogs and Northwestern Wildcats in the Gator Bowl. There was a time earlier in the season when the Bullpups of Hell State were the toast of the town, riding an undefeated record before crashing hard with 3 losses in their final 4 games. The Kitties from Illinois, meanwhile, were busy with their own coming-out party, shocking a few teams on the way to a 9-3 record. No one really expected the litter from Lake Mission to come this far, but no one counted on the Dog Pound barking as much either. It's a classic battle of the cats and dogs, with cat scratch fever coming out ahead. Stanley Stinker, Mississippi State. North Carolina State Wolfpack and Vanderbilt Commodores in the Music City Bowl. This is a home game of sorts for the Admirals of Vandy, playing before a home crowd in Nashville. NC State will need to change their road habits for this one. All 3 of the Pack's losses have come on the road. They did manage to win twice as visitors, but both of those games were too close for comfort. This game will come down to the passing game for Mr. Wolf, the heralded mascots for the Wolfpack, against a stingy defense for the Seamen. There'll be a lot of smart peels in this one, but Stanley Stinker is NC State. South Carolina Gamecocks and Michigan Wolverines in the Outback Bowl. The old ball coach is headed back to Tampa, where he got his coaching start 30 years ago for the USFL Bandits. He just hopes this trip with his forlorn fowl turns out a little better. Their opponent will be the Polecats of Michigan, who never really seemed to get going this year after an opening loss to Alabama in Dallas. The big games are something Michigan's growing accustomed to, and this is their chance at redemption. That is, if they can get past the USC defense, which has been shutting down running games all year. This will be a close one, but Stanley Stinker, Michigan. Southern Cal Trojans and Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets in the Sun Bowl. Before the 2012 season started, the pollsters were already proclaiming the men of Troy as the national champs. But 5 losses later, and they find themselves facing the rambling wreck in El Paso. Georgia Tech has the distinction of being the only team to make it to a bowl this year with a losing record, coming in at 6-7. But this game will be confusing for USC if they can't figure out the option offense run by the Engineers from Atlanta. That running game has put Georgia Tech in the top 5 nationally. Look for a lot of points and in an upset, Stanley Stinker, USC. Texas A&M and Oklahoma Sooners in the Cotton Bowl. This is the first game for Johnny Football since his trip to New York City to be crowned Johnny Heisman, and the big question will be how the freshman quarterback from the Gig'ems has handled his newfound stardom. The Land Thieves have had success stopping the run this year, but in Week 4 against a similar style quarterback from Kansas State, the team came up short. Oklahoma doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes, just like me, but when they do, they don't normally make the same mistakes twice. Look for the Heisman jinx to come true. Stanley Stinker, Texas A&M. Louisville Cardinals and Florida Gators in the Sugar Bowl. There was a time after the regular season ended when Louisville coach Charlie Strong was being courted by just about every major college team. But Strong stood his ground, and one reason might be that he gets to face his old team, the Swamp Lizards of Florida, in the Sugar Bowl. Strong's first head coaching credit came with the Gators, as he was the interim coach for Florida in one game in 2004 before the hiring of Urban Meyer. There'll be a lot of passion in this game for the Redbirds, but probably not as much offense, and we all know you can't win if you can't score. Stanley Stinker, Louisville. All right, we are just getting started on this, the final edition of Stanley Stinkers for 2012. Still to come, we have the only team to start the season and end the season in the Georgia Dome, plus a battle between Optimus Klein and the Flying Hawaiian. Oh yeah, and the Golden Domers versus the Mobile Homers, or if you prefer, the Irish and the Tide. Those games and more coming up. Stanley Stinkers is brought to you by Vistaprint. Did you know you can get top quality business cards at rock bottom prices from Vistaprint? You can also get promotional items like refrigerator magnets, koozies, pins, t-shirts, and much, much more. And the biggest secret of all is the websites. Vistaprint can help you design and manage your professional website for about $20 a month. That's what we use here at Stanley Stinkers. Check out the sponsor page for the link and tell them Stanley sent you. This week's show is also brought to you by Passion by Eve. From lotions to potions to things that go buzz in the night. Check them out at passionbyeve.com. And make sure you like Stanley Stinkers' Facebook page. It'll give us something to look forward to next year. Give us your feedback or just let us know you enjoyed the Stinkometer this college football season. LSU Tigers and Clemson Tigers in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. Dabo Swinney started the 2012 season in Atlanta, and he finishes in Atlanta. But the opponent in the latter game is a little tougher than the first one. The Clemson Tigers opened the season with a win against Auburn in the Kickoff Classic, and now they run up against the Bayou Bengals in a defense that ranks near the top 10 in almost every category. If LSU quarterback Zach Mettenberger has a career game like he did against Alabama, look for a ton of points in another bowl game loss for Clemson. But even without the massive points, LSU should control the game. Stanley Stinker, Clemson. Georgia Bulldogs and Nebraska Cornhuskers in the Capital One Bowl. Nebraska makes a return trip to the game formerly known as the Citrus Bowl after losing to South Carolina last year. This year, Nebraska has a pass defense that is ranked tops in the country, and that may be a lot for Georgia quarterback Aaron Murray to handle. If the Silver Slack Canines want to hold on to their lofty ranking, they may have to rely more on the Gershel Express and their heralded defense. This is a payback game for Georgia as they try to show the rest of the nation they can win the big games. And they probably will. Stanley Stinker, Nebraska. Oregon Ducks and Kansas State Wildcats in the Fiesta Bowl. These are two teams that could have been playing for the national championship had a late season upset not altered each of their plans. Kansas State comes into the game still stinging from the upset loss to Baylor before closing out their regular season strong with a win against Texas. The Quackers, meanwhile, were shot down by Stanford before closing their regular season with an impressive win against Oregon State. This will be a game that features two quarterbacks capable of taking over the contest. Will it be Optimus Klein for the Cats or the flying Hawaiian Marcus Mariota for Oregon? Aloha. This time it means goodbye to the Wildcats. Stanley Stinker, Kansas State. Alabama Crimson Tide and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in the BCS Championship game. This is a matchup that is all about tradition. The Pachyderms and the Leprechauns each have their share of storied seasons and championships to brag about, but the only game that really matters is this one. The Tide will be looking for their third championship in 4 years, while the Irish are just pulling back into the championship club, being absent from the trophy room since 1988. These two defenses are at the top of the national rankings, and the two offenses are pretty close. This game should be a classic, but it should come down to experience and coaching. If it does, look for Alabama to continue their dynasty. Stanley Stinker, Notre Dame. And while we're at it, here are a few more games that show up on the Stinkometer. TCU will get gigged by Michigan State in the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl. Purdue will be bowled by Oklahoma State in the Heart of Dallas Bowl. Wisconsin will be badgered by Stanford in the Rose Bowl. Northern Illinois will get scalped by Florida State in the Orange Bowl. Arkansas State will get flashed by Kent State in the GoDaddy.com Bowl. Pitt will be beaten by Ole Miss in the BBVA Compass Bowl. And in a meteorological masterpiece, the Tulsa Hurricanes will get spun by the Iowa State Cyclones in the Liberty Bowl. Stanley Stinkers is intended for entertainment only. Thanks for making us part of your 2012 season. We will be back next year. You can count on it. Stanley Stinkers is a production of Gramagdala Sports. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this podcast without the express written permission of me, Stanley Stinkowich, is appreciated. Until August, so long from the Rocket City of Huntsville, Alabama, where we use reverse prognostication to predict the losers in college football's biggest game.